if you don't have a good understanding of how cash flow works, will get you in trouble, no matter how good your CFO is, because you're the one that's going to ultimately press go on those purchase decisions. And you're going to be the one that has the most to lose. You have to be good at it. I feel dangerous going into these next 5 years because I can truly see all those things.
Imagine you're in the boardroom, your boss pulls you in and fires you because you're not dressed well enough and the t-shirt you're wearing looks too schlocky. What's the first thing you do? Well, it's probably not taking on a bunch of really high rate credit card debt and starting a t-shirt company. But that's exactly what Steve Borrelli from Cuts Clothing did. Fast forward 8 years, he sold hundreds of millions of dollars of t-shirts and he has a lot of hard-won wisdom. Steve was playing with fire. He borrowed a lot of money at obscenely high rates to build that business, but he's learned how to buy inventory. We go really deep on strategies, on understanding how you make money from the buy, not necessarily the sell. We talk about influencer marketing, where he spent millions and millions of dollars getting everybody from minor league athletes to Patrick Mahomes wearing his product, where he got it right, where he got it wrong. There's a ton of moments where he really wasn't sure what to do next and had to figure them out, but he got through them. He tells us about what he's looking forward to, the biggest problems he has going forward. It's an incredible interview. You're going to learn a ton. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Borrelli, Cuts Clothing. First off, give me some quick highlights on Cuts Clothing, where you've been, where you at, something to orient people around your business and how it's doing and where it's going.
Yes, absolutely. We started in 2017, 2018. I was working at an advertising agency and my boss kicked me out of the office and he said that t-shirt you're wearing isn't formal enough for the boardroom. And with that story, it inspired me to start my own brand called Cuts. The vision was to create a t-shirt that wasn't athletic, but wasn't that old cotton tee that would wrinkle and shrink right away. And so we launched Cuts for the sportive business. And since then, we've sold close to 8 million items, close to 400 million cumulative sales since we started, and all with $50,000 that I launched the brand with when I started.
I mean, I did some research on your story. I mean, what struck me is you guys built with only 4 people well into the 8 figures on basically one SKU, right? On t-shirts.
Yep. Yeah, we did our first 10 million with no full-time employees and actually 4 different cities. One guy lived in Seattle, one guy lived in LA, one San Diego, and then another in a small town in Wenatchee. And, we hustled our way there. I paid myself in credit card points through $10 million, and all of those guys just worked on it for free. Our CFO at the time, or the guy I started it with, he goes, "Hey, I'll move to LA when we do 10 million, thinking it was going to be in a few years. He was getting married. And then, shortly after, within a year and a half, he was moving to LA and right in the middle of him getting married. So it was, kind of a funny, good news story of him getting to LA.
I'm looking at your background. You obviously sell a lot more in t-shirts today. I believe you're in golf, women's wear, outerwear. Take us back to the moment where you got this one successful SKU. You've made your name taking a t-shirt, making it formal enough for the boardroom, right? Solving the pain that you had getting fired from that ad agency. What made you decide to expand into different categories? And what were the various things you were considering at that time?
I think maybe a big learning lesson is, we wanted to make things for the sportive business. And it started with t-shirts, so something you could wear every day. And then it went to joggers, which you see kind of here, which is our second number one seller, a transitional piece. The way we designed it was similar with the t-shirt where you could dress it up or down. And that's really been our ethos of any product we go into. And, we've made mistakes over the years. I think, one of the, we had so much success in the early days. It was almost like we couldn't come out with something that didn't sell out. But with that coming, then we also gained a lot of resources at that time. We got really good suppliers, really good terms. But that allowed us to kind of spread our wings and say, hey, what do we want to do? But with that, we that 20th item you create is going to be a lot different than that first and second seller that you've been hammering the market that you offer it. That 20th item is much different than that first. And I think one of the lessons we learned is if you go wide and you don't have a good story behind it, or you don't know how you're going to sell it, it can be a huge cash burden on you, and you can have that inventory for a while. And I have some stories of products that we definitely learned the hard way.
I went through something similar at David's Tea. It reminds me of the saying, pressure makes diamonds, right? Sometimes you become a victim of your own success. You think everything you touch is going to turn to gold. I mean, we had exploded on the scenes with loose leaf tea. We moved into accessories, which was a natural fit with the brand. And then we started taking the tea flavors and doing things like lip gloss, and that flopped. And of course, became a big cash tie up in inventory, etc. I have my lessons as I look back on it, but what would you, for the person listening here who's having some success, being known for one thing, what's the framework you would use today, knowing what you know, to consider whether you should expand or just stick to your knitting?
Yeah. So there's different buys for complementary items. So meaning they don't compete with your current hero SKU, as well as items that are fully new. And there's a really big distinction in there. So a complementary item is an item like a t-shirt and a jogger. The jogger doesn't compete with the t-shirt, but it goes well. Someone who bought a crew curve from us or a block t-shirt would want to pair that with that. That can have a high degree of success. Now, if you're coming out with a new item, call it like a graphic tee. One, would that person that we spent millions and millions of dollars on want to buy that graphic tee from us, or would they want to buy it from the graphic tee brand? The answer is they would probably want to buy it from the graphic tee brand. So for us, we really try to build around our core item, which is our t-shirt complementary items that we can go deep in, that we can create the next hero SKU. And we've done that with our bomber jacket became that because you could wear it over the white tee, our joggers. Then we went into straight leg joggers. So the way we go about it is once we get a complementary product that does well, then we try to expand the TAM through different fits. So if you look at our t-shirt, we had a crew curve, then we had a AO Forever, which is a straight hem with a little bit more room on the hips area. Then we had a long and short sleeve, then a Henley, then a V-neck. And that one fabrication, now all of a sudden we had all these SKUs for it, and then also from our inventory risk, we could buy that fabric in bulk and make it into a bit different items. And we got all the juice out of that t-shirt in that because we could do 14 silhouettes, but not incur a ton of inventory risk because we would all of it share the same fabric. Now with joggers, we did the same. We had a jogger, then we made it a pant, then we made it a classic fit pant. And so you're getting the complementary products and then increasing the TAM. Using the graphic tee example, that's one of the mistakes we didn't do. Our women's, we did like a tennis collection that didn't do well because, we realized that the women's products, they wanted the basics just like the men's. And if they want a cute little skirt, they're going to buy that from a women's brand. Now we look at, okay, what is a core item? What is a complementary, and how to expand the TAM?
Hi, I'm David. I'm the president of Highbeam. But before that, I built a brand called David's Tea from 0 to 200 million in sales, and I took it public on the NASDAQ. Highbeam is a banking and cash management platform for consumer brands. It's the bank I wish I had when I was building David's Tea. We'll turn banking from a cost center for you today into a profit center for you tomorrow. We'll make you better cash back on ad spend. We'll maximize your yield on idle working capital through daily automated sweeps. And we have a host of AI-powered tools to save you a boatload of time. Check us out at highbeam.com and let's talk. It's interesting hearing you talk. It's you always know you are right or wrong in hindsight, but of course it's difficult to figure out what's complementary, what's competitive in the moment. But it sounds like you mitigate the risk by you make your investments in the fabric, which does that allow you to do short runs in different types of items with the fabric versus just going into an entirely different category and an entirely different fabric?
Yeah, it's a lot of risk. So it also makes us think long term. So if we're thinking of a new item and there's only one use case for it in terms of like a graphic tee, there's that graphic and that's it, and it's going to be short lived. That's not we're not a hugely funded business. That's going to be really hard for us to build any level of momentum because once it sells out, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and start all over. So if you're a bootstrap business, you want to think, all right, long term, how could I create a product today that's going to build credibility in the marketplace and be around in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? And then to do that, how do we create the most TAM within that item by expanding the type of body types or sizes that people could wear? And that's how we do product development. But one of the biggest mistakes we made is thinking, oh, this product's really cool. And it may be cool and it may really sell well. But if you sell it once and then it never comes back, the LTV of that product is very weak, is not very good. So another thing why core high replenishment products are so good for the business is it's always easy, and there's a ton of data on this, to get someone to buy the same item from you just in a different color than to a completely new product. Or and what we've seen is if someone wants a black t-shirt, they'll buy a black Henley in that fabric or a long sleeve. So whether a variation of the product in sizing or fit or a different color, you have I think it's an 80% more chance to sell to that person that previously bought from you. And that's how we build LTV. I think a lot of times new brands, they don't really understand like CAC to LTV. And if you're acquiring customers, even at break even on an item, and then that item's not available to repurchase, it's kind of a pointless sale. It's not really doing much for you and driving additional contribution margin dollars. So you want to think, okay, what is that second purchase? Is this fabric going to be good to acquire someone on that same second purchase?
I mean, these are hard-won lessons. One of the things with CAC to LTV, that it's almost like a cross your fingers and hope situation at the start, it feels like. It's interesting that you're coming at it from a replenishment angle. I would have actually thought, and we often found this with tea, you sell them on the seasonal collection, they start to come to you for newness. But you're also right at the same time, like, we sold a lot of Earl Grey, so and those were steady sellers. But how long did it take you to realize basics were really where you were going to get the replenishment, where I like a blue t-shirt, I'm going to buy that t-shirt, I'm probably going to buy another blue one, and maybe I buy a black one, but I don't want to buy, the Olympics are the talk du jour, and I don't want to buy a shirt that says Olympics, on it.
In the beginning, our biggest asset was our constraints. So we didn't have money. We didn't even really know fashion, to be honest. It was hard for us to make product. So we just said, okay, what else can we use this fabric that we know people like? And we have a great supplier that's willing to give us 90-day terms. That's how we funded the business. And our constraints became our biggest asset. And so we didn't even know it at the time. And what we did was we tried to give the basics a brand name, which was Cuts. So when you put on Cuts, we did great marketing around it. We seeded it to Patrick Mahomes and a ton of minor league baseball players at the time that then became pros. Walker Buehler, we did a shoe collab with Jeremy Piven, Entourage guy recently. We just had the Super Bowl MVP DM us this morning, ask for our most recent collection. So we built it basics through athletes. And I really believe that our biggest weakness became our biggest strength in being cash constrained. And so we were forced into making colors a big deal. Like that was going to be our peacocking newness, but it allowed us the simplicity in the business to scale really quick. And I think a lot of times when we added a bunch of SKUs, it can slow you down because you start adding SKUs and you're thinking, oh, I can get 5 million from this, 10 million from this. But what it does is it actually slows you down and it might eat into the thing that got you there, which is what has happened to us at times. And so when you're doing a product expansion, you better just take care of the core. We have a saying that's written up in the office as you can see it here is respect the core. Respect the core, take care of the core. It's Michael Jordan. It's what people know us for. Respect the core.
You mentioned bootstrapping. I mean, you famously bootstrapped all the way into the 8 figures. I believe you're using credit card debt at one time to fund the business, right?
When we started, so I moved home. I saved up. I lived at home. I saved up $50,000 to start, and I ran a Kickstarter. So between those two things, at $100,000. Our first PO, though, one thing we had all these SKUs and then they were like, oh, there's minimums, which we didn't know what we were doing. We were 26 at the time, and the minimums to get all the styles ended up being like 180,000. So I go to the 0 APR for 12 months. Crazy interest rates, like 28% interest rates on these credit cards. But I was able to get $80,000 from getting a couple different of them. So I was able to use the Kickstarter money, what I saved up, to rally together close to 200,000. And we were selling the inventory so fast that I was able to turn that like 250, so to speak, into 500, and then that 500 into $1 million. And then from there, I was able to use things like Shopify Capital to fund the business. Meanwhile, we didn't have much overhead. So we kept the overhead stupid low, literally in terms of payroll, like zero, until we hit 10 million.
And where were the moments where you're like, I'm on the hook for a terrifying amount of money and this might not work?
I got that question actually yesterday, and I was so focused on growing the business, which this was an asset in the beginning, but maybe not good as we scaled, closer to 100 million. But, I think you need a founder in the beginning that has like a do or die like kind of mindset and that is focused on just solely driving revenue. And that was me. And then our CFO at the time, I was like, you just make sure I'm never going to make a mistake that we can't afford. And I think that was really, really important in the beginning. But then the learnings that I've had in high beam and, dealing with bank failures or tariffs or things like that, I've had to transition. Now, the first thing I look at as a founder is a 13-week cash flow every single day. And every single day I wake up, I look at that even below, above our Shopify account, because that's what's going to, keep us alive. So I've had to evolve over the last 7 years into a better CFO. But in the beginning, I had no debt and I, wasn't married or had no kids or anything like that. So I was just like, hey, I got nothing to lose. Let's ride.
When did you realize, okay, I can't fly. I've been growth at all costs. Well, not really at all costs. I mean, you're still running your cost structure very low. But when did you realize I am laser focused on growth? What was that moment where it sunk in for you that this wasn't going to work? It may have worked to get you where you were, but not where you're going.
From 2020 to 2022, we grew like 280%. I mean, we're talking big numbers now. We always focused on profitability, but the thing we didn't, and our CFO at the time he was more of an accountant. He wasn't like a traditional CFO. So we were able to, we had a really clean books. We could close the books on time. But in terms of financial forecasting, we didn't really be able to see like, okay, what's the downside of over purchase PO? We might have a profitable business, but if we have too much inventory, then we'll run out of cash. So it was really like in 2022 when we still grew like 80% that year, but we thought we were going to grow like 120%. So then we had a significantly amount of COGS to really, I call it like the black swan, is we had too much inventory and then there was a little slowdown, which is just funny. It was from 120% to 80% growth. And then at the same time, the debt facilities that we're using also got expensive. So we had inventory that we couldn't pay for because we ordered too much. And then the lines of credit we were using went up from like, 6% when we started the business or zero because we had 0% to like 14%. So now all of a sudden, like it got much more, that ate into our profitability and our flow of the business. So and then we also had a bank that went BK at that time that, the line just went down. That's how I originally got connected with High Beam, and just like maneuvering we had to do there. We had to learn some lessons really the hard way, of how to protect cash at all costs. So that's when I think I went from a kind of a bullish, could do no wrong CEO to more of a cash first, a little bit more cautious CEO.
It's interesting. You and I have talked a lot about this idea of you can be profitable but broke. Tell us a bit more about that. I mean, you've had so many lessons on, you either buy too much or too little, and you've run into the trap of buying too much, and boy, can it hurt you. What do you know now that you wish you knew, at some of those early days?
Yeah, it's better to sell out than have too much. So selling out's a good thing. Don't be afraid of that. Understand your risk. Like, I don't think I did that. When things are going so well and you're always selling out inventory, it's hard to even think like in risk because like you can't fathom it. You're getting inventory as soon as you can and you're turning it over in days, and those can create a lot of bad habits. And I think growth can hide a lot of structural issues that just are run poorly. Like I talk to some founders now that are crushing it, that their operations are like one move away from the whole thing going down. And I can see it, but even if I tell them, they're like, no, this is going to last forever. You really just got to protect cash at all costs and have a room for a rainy day. Specifically when you're growing, and to, you as a founder, you've probably taken a lot of years where you're not making good money. As soon as you can, I would recommend take some money out and take care of yourself first, because you never know when it could end. I think in the beginning, as we had 62 employees at one time, and we were just focusing on the next big growth thing. And I think, if I had to do it all over again, I would have just maybe didn't hire 25 of those and made a couple more $1 million those years for me. And so I think those are all things that, I might have learned the hard way, but also too, through those hard times, you can become a really good financially sound CEO that a lot of people read books, but then you'll go through it. And I think that's definitely myself kind of going over the last couple of years.
When you say I can see it and they can't, so you're looking at these friends' businesses, they're like, my business is growing like crazy. You see something they don't. What are those warning signs right away where you're like, uh-oh?
So let's say you're levered up with a 12 to 14% line of credit because we run a business that is cash intensive.
By the way, just for the listeners, 12 to 14% is not really 12 to 40%, right? You mean in a fixed fee merchant cash advance. So it ends up being, you're talking about like a Shopify capital loan, right?
Yeah, exactly. We don't do those anymore.
Right. So those are not 12 to 14%. That's a fixed fee where even as you pay down the principal, you're still paying interest on the original amount. So your 14% is like 30% plus when you factor in the fees on true APR. But yes,
I think those are actually going to be illegal in like the state of New York soon and many states coming up. So let's say you have that and then you have inventory risk and you're buying at 100% growth. If even the growth rate slows down by like 20, 30%, now you're going to have all this inventory. You've been running maybe at a 10% margin. You're profitable at 10%. You're not going to have runway if even a little tick of slowdown happens because all your cash will be in inventory. You also have around a 10% interest fee at least. So now that eats into your profitability and you're going to be in a really tough spot. So what I recommend is say, why not increase your profitability and slow down growth if there's so much growth and just bank more cash and then use less debt. And then and just pocket more money if during those really, really good times, instead of push AMER all the way to the brink of break even where there's not much margin just to get that extra, some of these numbers can be huge. 10, 20 extra million can be the difference between an AMER of a 1.5 or 1.7. And that difference could be a ton of growth. I think those are things that founders don't understand. And I've seen it time and time again. You get through 10, 20 million pretty easily. And then everything breaks when you kind of hit that 50 mark. And because, it takes a lot more, there's competition. Usually what gets you to 50 is you found a little sliver in the market where you're truly unique. A couple of years go by, someone says, hey, we're going to undercut the cost. Oh, there's competition now. And so you have a slowdown, you have other competitors in the market. And now you're that 10% is actually hard to come by. So a lot can go wrong if you're not have a good balance sheet.
Yeah, we interviewed Maurice from Still Here, and he talked about, he's like, I purposely hold back growth. I define my growth at the start of the year, and I won't buy in more into it.
Yeah, that's very smart. I think, me and you had a really good conversation in New York about kind of how big the mid-market's getting. There's a ton of competitors in the mid-market, that 50 to 250, call it, range of businesses. But I think a lot of people forget, because in e-com, you don't hold the product. Like we see the product here, but these are for photo shoot samples and stuff. But our 3PLs in San Bernardino, and you forget how big of a business is like a $50 to $100 million business is. But if you could run that a little slower and be a $50 million business doing 15, 16 points, debt free, that's a really good business. A lot of great founders want to get to that 100 or 2 and they just burn. There's a really good example of, I'll leave their name private, but there's this investment group that said they were talking to us in this women's underwear brand. And it was 2020. It was kind of when the diversity was kind of like in market, so to speak. And they offered a ton of sizes, this brand. And their whole thing was like, we have a size for you. And very similar size. They wrote him a $25 million check. I think there was like $5 million secondary, $20 million of primary capital in the business, which is a ton of cash if you know what you're doing. 20 million can be a massive amount of cash. 2 years later, less than 2 years later, they sold it for their inventory. It was done because they bought a bunch of inventory thinking they were going to get to 100 mil, and the company bought all these sizes they couldn't sell. Again, one of our biggest assets when we didn't really know the business that well was that we still, even with the lines of credit, we still had a pretty big constraint. So we couldn't just do whatever we wanted to because we didn't know we didn't know what we didn't know at that time. And I've just seen this thing now. I've been in it, 8 years, happen over and over again. Is like inventory is your best friend and then it's your worst enemy. And so now things we do is like we have certain off-price suppliers that buy our inventory. That we have a deal that they get our consignment inventory so we can get our COGS back. And the way I look at it, I got really good advice from Steve Kaplan. He's part owner of the Memphis Grizzlies and He's a big sports owner. He's a partner in Cuts now, and he had experience with lots of brands in his career. And one of the advice he gave me was look at your off price as your risk. So let's just say you can get rid of $1 million or $2 million of COG value on off price a year. Okay, $2 million if you have 80% gross margins, an extra, every million is around 4 to 8 million of top or 4 million of top line. So, okay, you can have a risk inventory of of that amount through your off price. Okay, boom. That's how you say, okay, we want to grow. And let's say your growth rate is 25%, but you're like, I think we can get to 40. Order 40 because you know you have that off price covered. That's one risk mitigation. The second risk mitigation is in core product. So if you're selling a lot of core items, maybe on those, you order to the 40% instead of the 20%. But on those seasonal items, which is important to every business, order those below the growth rate. Order them like to the 10%. And then you're saying, Stephen, well, that newness is what brings in everybody. Not really. The 10% will get you enough to get people in the door. And then the growth rate will be through those core items that there's not risk on. And so I think like just having that system and guardrails down will allow you to like avoid so many headaches. And so we've worked on good off-price channels, that are not that are in different countries. And honestly, it's a great business. You can even make some margin on it sometimes. Like last year on our off-price on bad inventory that we couldn't sell, we still had like great contribution margin dollars because we had a good relationship. We told them we ordered it the right way. We worked the COGS with them before we bought, said, hey guys, if we sell this to you inventory, are you going to be able to come, at least get a couple bucks on it? And so it allows me like, all right, buying team, let's go, and it just having those understanding of how you can get rid of inventory before you buy it on the downside is how you actually allow yourself the cash to go for the upside.
But do you worry about brand? I mean, often the knock on selling it off price is that your brand shows up on the TJX rack. Do you care about that?
I used to worry about that more. But this year I saw Lululemon there. I saw Viore in Costco. Those businesses, I think, I actually think it can actually expand TAM. I think it would be an issue if you were always there every month and they knew they could buy you there. That's when I think the brand damage is. But if it's just because there's so many of those stores out there, like Cuts was in 0.000% of those. It's only a problem until it becomes a huge win when you're doing like $100 million. But if it's like $1 million or $2 in COGS spread out through like Canada, US, and Europe, it's like, no, I'm not.
It's like the saying, what you stand for as a brand should never change. How you do things should never stop changing. Often we're too precious on the definition of brand. Brand is the quality of that shirt. Brand is the essence of what you're doing. You got fired for not wearing a formal enough t-shirt in the boardroom. You're trying to fix that. Brand isn't necessarily someone who's able to get a high quality product that you maybe bought too much of at a distribution point where they happen to shop, which in this case is Costco or TJX or wherever.
Yeah, I mean, I think Costco is actually helps brand because it's a premier club. Sam's Club in certain areas is looked as a premier spot as well. But yeah, TJX, like think about the buyer persona of someone going in there too. They're like trying to scavenger hunt for good brands that are on sale. I have zero worry about that. If anything, I think it helps because you're kind of where that customer is in their current life. It's also downside risk if you think about it in like, I think what we've been through the last year and a half where consumers are very price sensitive. Inflation's been crazy. They want a deal. It allows you actually to not have discounts on your site and also meet them where they are. So I think there's actually a lot of benefits to brand and meeting the consumer where they are if done tastefully.
And can you get into these? If I'm a $5 million brand listening to this, do I have a shot at getting into these off-price partners?
I think you would, but you might actually kind of there might be a pretty big discount they would apply. But I think at 5 million, yeah, you would have a shot. It's a different game than e-com. It's more of a old school developer relationship, get them excited. I mean, that's where the brand actually matters a lot. So they see our ads on, when Mahomes is wearing it or Jeremy Piven is launching or all the athletes wear it. So like brand helps you with all of those other things and it opens doors. And so if you actually have a product worth a damn, it should open up no problem.
I know I definitely want to talk about your influencer marketing because it's something you guys do at a world-class level. And I want to talk about tariffs. And I know you wrote an open letter to Trump, but I can't help but geek out just a little bit more on inventory management. Before you figured out this off-price strategy to mitigate your buying mistakes, talk to us about the biggest buying mistake you ever made and the pinch you were in, and sort of what did you do next? Like, bring us back to that moment. I know you had one.
If everyone remembers like that 250% growth year from 21 to 2020, when I thought the business was over, to, hey, we could sell anything. We at this point in 2020, we still only sold one item, which was a Pika Pro block tee, and had a bunch of silhouettes. Then we ordered 50,000. This is so funny. Sight unseen. So we had one sample of our jogger, which is still our number one seller. 50,000 of them in May. We delivered them in August, and we sold through them by the end of the year. And we could have probably sold 100,000 of a new complementary item. I mean, it was, in that time, we were literally living in like, we could do no wrong. But that was the beginning of a lot of mistakes. Not a lot of mistakes, because we're still around. A lot of businesses didn't make it, but it taught us something that wasn't true. That we could order 50,000 units of an item and sell them in 4 months. Then the next year, all of a sudden, every supplier wants to work with us. We can get we can get crazy lines of credit. At this time, there's this, I'll leave their nameless, but an online kind of debt provider I had a $40 million line of credit within 5 hours. Like, just given to my, we didn't take that much. We ended up taking like 18 or something. But just like, that's how easy money was then too. So we had two bad things happen. We had unlimited capital that we had to pay back. It wasn't equity. And unlimited like resources in terms of product development. And so we were like, all right, let's get into women's. We did women's, and crop tees were kind of a thing. And we were selling a lot of women's crop tees, but we ended up buying like XL and double XL women's crop tees. And we kind of had a staff at the time that it was also like the inclusivity era, do everything for everyone. So, hey, we want to have inclusive sizing and stuff like that. And one of our guys on the team said, like, I don't think that type of a body type is going to want crop tees. It's just not something I don't think could sell. But we were kind of like, no, we need to do it. And today we still have those crop tees. We ordered like 50,000. And of course we sold like 25,000 overnight of like white and black size, extra small, small and medium, and then large and XL. Like, I think we weren't selling any. It just goes to show you, like, we just didn't know, we weren't thinking of the customer. And that was a pretty big hurt. And, we're actually finally found someone to kind of take them off our hands, like actually this week. But, it was a 3-year just cash burn of like $350K, and there are also certain colors of crop tees. Like, we didn't realize like women mainly only buy black and white, even in those smaller sizes. And so just like that was a huge mistake there.
And what did you do next? I mean, you have the world supply of these crop tees in sizes that nobody wants. It's $300,000 buying mistake that you're still living with 3 years later. So it sounds like you basically sat on it and hoped your growth would get you out of it.
Yeah. And it didn't necessarily do that. So that problem, I mean, we've kind of, $5K a month are able to kind of get rid of it, and the problem's no longer really there. But that's what really kicked off the strategy that I just mentioned with off price, sample sales, understanding where our risk is. And then the rest of the business had to be super tight because of that. So like our core items, it really affected core, or the rest of our buys. It really created a great discipline of that. And especially in fashion, there's SKUs, there's sizes, there's colors, there's a lot of areas where things can go wrong. And just knowing like, okay, planning for things can go wrong is really, really important, because it will happen. And that's what that area taught us. So we had to, cut staff because of those decisions, get rid of our nice office that we had, and find margin else places to kind of survive it. I think the businesses that have survived over the last 3 years, they had to deal with, in 21, the ports closing down. Like, we had items in the water for like 2 months because the LA port was so backed up. Then the next year there was like that credit crisis in 22 that kind of went 22 and 23. and then led into tariffs, which kind of was like the last year and a half. So I think business have become more resilient, especially in this space that are still around. Hundreds of brands that I kind of grew up with are no longer here because they made a tragic mistake over inventorying, or they were running on debt too high. I know this one brand, they made like women's lip gloss. They did in 21, they launched the brand in 2020, they did 4 million. The next year they did 40. They bought for 80. The next year they did 18, and the business was over by then. So just competition is a real thing. Like, you got to pay attention to that. And like slow, like there's a famous saying that I tell the team is fast is slow and slow is fast. I'm butchering it.
The one that comes to mind that I was brought up with is the money's made on the buy, not the sell.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Steve, speaking of the sell, it would be a huge miss if we didn't cover how you guys do influencer marketing. I mean, you started with Kickstarter, minor league athletes, Patrick Mahomes. You've had so many great campaigns. You've had millions of dollars. What do you get right about influencer marketing that most people get wrong?
We had this saying, like, shirts on back. Like, we just wanted our shirts on people and let the quality of it do the talking. So one, to do good influencer marketing, you need a good product that people want. And it should be easy in the like, we make items for college athletes and everyday athletes, like guys that are health conscious, that take care of their bodies. So athletes were a natural fit to be our muses. And so we made a product for the right community, and then we found the muses that would also want the product. So if you get that wrong, like, I see a lot of brands like trying to force it with athletes. I'm like, that's not really your muse. But, it's changed over the years. Like, in the beginning, we would seed product and we could get organic tags and things like that. And then more people started doing it. So then we spent $7 million in 22 on influencers. And then 23, that same strategy didn't really work. Like, the discount code, hey, I'm wearing a Cuts tee, shop it. And we would see the sales from the discount code go up. We were big in mom bloggers one year because that was crushing, and they had a lot of like eyeballs on them. And now we're sort of on like the TikTok, ification of, getting a bunch of affiliates making tons of videos for us that can go viral. And that's the strategy that's working. So I think this part of our marketing, more than anything, has evolved every year. And we've been flat-footed at times where a strategy that worked in the previous year stops working, but we still double down and it becomes really inefficient. So I think your marketing people, like, the algorithms are always changing, and you got to be really on your toes, and you got to be quick to pivot when certain things don't work.
Well, especially, linking back to our earlier conversation, if you're buying into growth and you don't hit the right marketing activities, you end up with shrink. It can ruin you on any one year. But talk to us, I'm going to let my Canadian side show here. It's like the famous Gretzky saying, I in hockey, I want to be where the puck's going, not where it was. Where's the puck going next?
I think the days of like the celebrity are over because of the way the algorithms work. So the algorithms are based on content that people actually want to see. So yes, like, we did a Jeremy Piven campaign, but he's actually funny and people actually want to watch that. So it's the price per content is worth a little bit more. But like, if you're going to pick a random everyday athlete and he's like, hey, wear this shirt, that's worth $0 now. Like, athletes just literally, probably the content that they're going to be putting out is going to dumped in the algorithm, but people don't want to watch that. It's not what people want to watch. So there's got to be an education or entertainment level 2 pieces of content. And so, okay, if that's true, that the algorithms are more content focused, then you need a lot of shots on goal to see what's going to work. We've kind of flipped it on its head where we work with micro affiliates that make, commission content. So if content gets X amount of spend, they get paid. And so we don't pay anything unless it actually works for us. And so that's where it's really changed. And I think influencers have been a little bit hesitant. Oh no, I want deals. Like, I got $5,000 for a single piece of content. We're like, get out of here. Like, if that content doesn't do anything for us, we're not going to pay for it. You get a free shirt. But if it does well, we'll reward you handsomely. So I think those are the things, like, I actually like where influencer marketing is going now, because it's both the creator and the brand. It's more interest aligned. We got hosed in 22. Like, we paid a YouTuber $55,000 and he sold one shirt. And so, like, those days I think are benefiting the brand now, where the way the content algorithms are moving. But
of course you can, with a micro influencer, you can say, and just so we are clear on the mechanics, You give me your ad, I post your ad. If somebody clicks through from that ad and buys, I give you a commission, right?
Off the UTM code. Yeah.
But Jeremy Piven, he needs his money up front. How do
Yeah.
you know when you take a big swing like that? How do you know if it worked or not?
So the way we do it, just to go back to the cash thing, is let's just say I'm using simple math, not real numbers. But let's just say we have $1 million of contribution margin, and our kind of fixed cost hurdle is $500K. So now we have an extra $500K a month. That's a $6 million runway to profit. Okay, let's take 200 of that or 100 of that a month and invest in brand where we know, where we don't try to do any attribution. It is simply just a shot of what we think our customers will want to see. Now, that's something that is very important to do as building a brand. You need to do stuff that you just think is cool. And I think any like lifestyle type brand needs to have those moments. And that's kind of how we look at it. So we make the cash work. We keep the brand relevant. Like we did a campaign last year where I kind of faked my death, and then we Jeremy Piven, Entourage, Ari Gold type video ad came in, and actually you even called me, Dave, and you're like, are you stepping down?
I was like, are you out? Yeah.
We sold a lot of people in the industry that, because I posted on LinkedIn, hey, kind of almost like I was getting forced out. It was sort of believable too, because it was right after the tariffs and all this stuff happening. And I told the team, like, you have to sell it. Don't tell your friends. My mom and dad, I didn't even tell. And then when the thing came out, people were like, ah, shit, like that was epic. It really had a lot of like organic appeal to it. And so I think thinking of distribution when you do type things, like we had a whole pre-launch calendar for it to really make it worth it. And then it was also fitting entertainment or education. It was in the entertainment bucket. So like our meta ads had like, our meta ad told us like, hey, like we haven't seen this amount of like your watch time on your ads. I mean, this is like incredible. And so we got a lot of upper funnel brand awareness that we couldn't see in the moments on those ads because the actual purchase value of those ads wasn't very good. But we saw it come home in Q4 when we beat our number by a significant margin. So like in a monthly basis, like how are you going to get net new eyeballs? Meta's not that great. TikTok is great at net new eyeballs. So like through micro affiliates, TikTok driving a bunch of awareness doesn't show immediate sales, but it's showing your brand to a bunch of new people. And then on Meta, you need content that is going to show the algorithm different type of people. So people that like Ari Gold, we even saw it on some ads. Hey, I love the content, but I'm not really a cuts buyer. To me, that's a leading indicator that content actually is going to people that have never seen us before. And maybe that guy doesn't like us now, but maybe with new collections or he'll give us a shot. So those are how I think about it, of how to get to net new eyeballs.
Well, it's the only way to break out of the mid-market, right? Is if you only swim in your own swimming pool, you can't really grow the brand past a certain point. We hit that wall at David's Tea.
And it's getting harder too. The mid-market's getting smaller. Like those pools are getting more niche and the algorithms are getting better. And I'm probably speaking to people mainly on Meta and TikTok of like the good and bad thing is that it's really good at tracking conversions. But the bad thing is if you're not good at making diverse sets of content, you will not grow.
Steve, you're a busy man with a successful business, and I know you got to get back to it. Before we go, quick lightning round here. A couple of fast questions for you. What's the one tool you couldn't run your business without?
Highbeam's 13-week cash flow has been amazing. I look at that every day. That's one of them. We have a really good inventory report that we look at every day of like when understanding when we're stock outs and things like that. And obviously like Meta and Meta dashboard and all of that.
Decision you're wrestling with right now.
So we're getting ready for our August buy, which leads into Q4. So we're really trying to understand, okay, we actually have like mid layers is something that we're really focusing on next year because we had such success in 25. So we want to add 3 or 4 of those. Understanding how deep we go in some of these new products, kind of everything we talked about of, as we category expand, how to do it with least amount of downside.
And you're lining up those off-price retailers on the downside now, I imagine.
We actually showed them, hey, what do you want from here? What will you be willing to buy? And then we'll go deeper in those.
Every bootstrap founder should.
It's not good enough just to hire a good CFO that you think is good. You have to learn that stuff. Most CEOs are like kind of people like me, really ambitious, kind of see things and like irrational at times. But that irrationality, if you don't have a good understanding of how cash flow works, will get you in trouble, no matter how good your CFO is, because you're the one that's going to ultimately press go on those purchase decisions, and you're going to be the one that has the most to lose. You have to be good at it. So spend time getting to know how to run a 13-week cash flow, just understanding cash. I was so bad with it, and that makes me like cringe of how much more money I could have made, because ultimately it's going to cost you money out of your pocket.
I could talk for hours with you about this. I think so, the sell is the sizzle, and everybody wants to talk about advertising and driving top line, but man, managing cash flow is really the name of the game in consumer brands. I learned that the hard way too. It's one of the reasons I joined Highbeam. I think you dropped some serious wisdom here today that a lot of people will benefit.
I'll add one thing to that. I feel dangerous going into these next 5 years because I can truly see all those things. So like we're starting to see some serious growth again, and through some of these strategies. And I'm like, okay, now I know where to press go, where I can capitalize on that so much more safe. And I'll be able to do it with much more, instead of blind confidence like I had that happened to work. Now it's a little bit more of a calculated confidence that I'll have and knowledge base to be able to take market share.
Steve, you're world class, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on What to Do Next.
Love you guys.